everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Modernizing Essbase, Understanding Your Options. Today, we're going to be going over a company overview of iArc Solutions as a company. We'll talk about the roads that led us here to the latest version of Essbase. We're going to discuss understanding and navigating your options when upgrading. And we're also going to talk about some real life client examples. We're going to do questions and answers as we go throughout this webinar. You're going to go ahead and use the Q&A option of your Zoom. We have Jeff, a member of our engineering team, answering them in real time throughout the presentation. And after the webinar, we'll post all the questions and their answers in a follow-up email for attendees, and they'll also be on a blog on our website. So let me go ahead and introduce you to today's iArc panel. Hailing from California, I am your moderator today, Alex Durfee. I work for iArc Solutions in content marketing and operations. I would easily describe myself as a thrift store peruser and espresso martini sipper. And camped out in Connecticut, we have Joe Malewicki as a panelist today. He is also our fearless leader as president of iArc Solutions, and he's a certified cloud architect. Joe is an avid hiker and brown ale aficionado. And then next we have endemic of the great state of Florida. Steve Sheekey is joining us as a panelist as well today. He is our director of business development. Steve is a big-time bowler and red wine connoisseur. So now that you've met today's presenters, I'm going to pass the mic over to Steve, who will tell you a little bit about iArc Solutions as a company.
All right. Thanks, Alex. Be my pleasure to do so. And hello, everyone. Let me take a minute to introduce our company to those of you who are not familiar with us. iArc Solutions, proud to be offering our services and solutions now in our 10th year of operation. Our team of onshore certified consultants, architects, and engineers have been servicing our clients globally now for decades with cumulative experience in EPM cloud technology areas. We offer a full advisory services, implementation, design, and execution, and all the way to up to 24/7 day 2 support offerings. We're an Oracle certified cloud reseller, build and service partner, as well as holding partner certifications in other technologies like Rackware, Azure, and AWS. So why should you consider us as your cloud migration project? I say the first reason is probably our experience. The majority of our staff are previous Oracle and Hyperion senior consultants and above. The average tenure is over 20 years. Kind of makes us all seem experienced, not old, they're experienced. 20 years, over 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah, of EPM, Hyperion, Essbase hands-on technical work. We've been engaged with OCI since the early days of Gen 1 and leading up to Gen 1, as well as other cloud providers for over a decade now. I'd say the second one is probably our certifications. And all of our engineers hold certifications in OCI, from professional architect level to security to DevOps to database, et cetera, and more. We also have multiple certified Rackware architects and engineers within our organization, as well as an esteemed, acknowledged Oracle ace within our company in Joe Malewicki. Which is why I say we're considered or should be or are considered the go-to firm, as Joe will explain in a little bit. Everyone comes to us. We're the experts with the most tenure and experience. We work directly with our own clients, and as you'll see, a large workload through our consulting partners. We're one of the last surviving infrastructure-focused, certified on OCI, Oracle EPM, Hyperion, Essbase firms left. Like a lot of consulting firms, a lot of them have closed up shop, they've merged. So we are in our 10th year right now, and we haven't peaked yet. I'd like to say that we address the full scope, soup to nuts, for all our clients. We're happy to help with pre-sales process through sales and delivery, all the way to post go live managed services for any project on your plate. We cover things like advisory services, cloud solutions, infrastructure, data governance, integration, education, training, and support. And as you go through a migration or upgrade, a lot of these will come into play: cloud solutions, infrastructure, all of those, as well as advisory services. Finally, we do this for a living. Some of the most difficult pieces of the sales and migration OCI projects is dealing with IT and finance staff relationships. We're really good at this. We do it every day. I like to say we're kind of like the business translators. And now maybe toot our horns just a little bit, but a lot of the architects on our team have literally created the migration documentation used by Oracle for the upgrade and migration process over the last several years. Our practice leads used to run Oracle and Hyperion technical consulting groups and have actually established many of the procedures used today through the industry. So with that, maybe Joe, if you don't want, take a minute to kind of summarize what we're really all about.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate it. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. I can't really add a whole lot to what Steve said. That was kind of a great overview, but I do want to kind of mention one quick thing or reiterate one thing Steve did talk about. At RX Solutions, we truly do pride ourselves with our client and partner relationships. It's how we got where we are today. Whether it be from initially just a staff log or help out with the project as independent consultants up to where we are today, which is a global provider of services for Oracle applications and solutions. We do work with clients across every industry and vertical, public sector or private sector, you got it. We cover it all. We actually, as Steve mentioned, do work even internationally through our managed services group. We have some offshore clients that basically give us a hand. That we give a hand to kind of keep the lights on for them. We're often sought out by our partners and our channel solution providers to be their onshore architects. Basically, their boots on the ground for anything EPM VR related and lately cloud solutioning. And again, as I mentioned, we're proud to say we have a 100% return rate for our current direct clients that are listed as one of the top 5 rated service providers for Oracle's own marketplace. So once again, we thank you for joining us today. I want to share some information with you folks and remind you that we are here to truly build relationships, not only build and not only provide services for consulting. So thanks again for joining us. So I want to jump right in to our content presentation. And we're going to start out with a couple quick poll questions to make sure everyone's awake today. So we're going to have Alex, if you don't mind, pop up our first poll question, give you about 30 seconds or so to answer those polls. This helps us to kind of understand where folks are at today with things. These are anonymous. Don't worry about it. We ask you to answer accurately. And Steve will take a moment afterward to go through. And the first question is, what version of Essbase, if any, are you currently using? And then we'll give you a few seconds to answer that one. And that should pop up in your Zoom sessions there.
Okay, great. So we're at a little over 30 seconds. Thanks, everybody. Oh, we still got a couple people answering. Maybe I'll give it 2 more seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and let everyone review their answers with Steve.
All right, thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone, for taking part of this. Interesting results. We expected to see a lot of people still on the on-prem version, so it's pretty even between 11.1.2 and 11.2. There's a large group of people who are actually on 21C. Interesting. And then, you know, as we go through, we're going to talk about where different versions are. So there are a few people on the OAC, which was the SaaS Cloud version. So a good mixture, and appreciate everybody taking the time.
Okay, great. So thanks for that introduction to IARC Solutions, guys, and thanks to all of you for participating in the first poll. Now, I know Essbase has been around. In fact, it's been used by organizations for over 25 years. So like anything that's been around that long, I'm sure there's a bit of history to be told. Steve, would you mind taking us down that road?
That would be my pleasure, Alex. Yes, thank you. I'm sure there might be some people on the call that are familiar with this long winding road. So how did we get at Essbase 21C? So for that answer, I think a quick history lesson is in order. So back in the late 80s and into the 90s, there were two organizations, Hyperion and Arbor. So Hyperion was best in class for consolidations, planning, financial reporting apps, and Arbor was best in class for OLAP solutions and had the industry leading OLAP engine in Essbase. So the natural second step in this evolution was the merging of these two industry leaders into Hyperion Solutions. So now Hyperion Solutions had applications as well as the best OLAP engine in the world at this point in time. So that went on for some years, and then as we got a little bit later on, a lot of the EPM firms started getting acquired by larger vendors such as Oracle, IBM, and SAP. So I'd like to say that Oracle got the best, and when they acquired Hyperion Solutions, so they acquired Hyperion Solution, and as you can imagine, not an easy task folding us in. I'd like to say that's probably when things got really, really interesting. You had applications, you had Essbase, you had the introduction of cloud and all of its options, SaaS, PaaS, infrastructure. You had Essbase still being offered on-premise, the latest release being 11.124 up until recently. You had Essbase baked into all of the EPM SaaS cloud offerings like planning, consolidation, profitability. You also had Essbase being offered as its own SaaS cloud offering, like the survey just showed with OAC. People are using that. You also had Essbase 19C being introduced in the marketplace. You had versions on Windows, you had versions on Linux. So as you can imagine, the landscape was kind of cloudy, which led to the conclusion of we really need to do something to get one version of Essbase, which became the big push to get the Oracle 21C, Essbase 21C. So in this case now, Oracle 21C is one code. It's going to be used everywhere. You won't have separate versions of the product floating around. So that's kind of a little history of how we got to 21C and why we got to 21C. So Alex, I hope this provided a little background and why 21C is such a big thing.
Thanks, Steve. Some clients that we have already upgraded and others have considered moving to Essbase 21C. If they're considering, now's probably the time to start planning, right? Joe, what are your thoughts about that?
Actually, it's true, Alex. Actually, it is a great time to start thinking about it if you haven't already. And a lot of folks on this call, some of them already deployed 21C, to really consider the benefits of 21C and how it's being sort of modernized, if you will, by Oracle. Oracle's made a lot of great progress in the last several years, as Steve pointed out, to get this industry-leading solution up to par with what I kind of call current technology. Today, Essbase 21C whatever, it actually is Oracle's default Essbase code. It's integrated seamlessly with EPM now, or is available as a standalone solution. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit on those different options. Essbase 21C, it's mostly the same, whether you get the on-prem version or the cloud marketplace release right now. And I say mostly the same. There are a few differences here, but Oracle's been really good for the first time, believe it or not, about providing those documentation differences with a great little chart matrix. You can see, hey, what features available in the marketplace version, what features available if I go with the standalone deployed version of Essbase. 21C also has a whole new unique UI to it. It's a very clean user interface. It's WebLogic and a Java application server under the hood, which makes it a very, very nice web front end. So the users now will have two access points typically to Essbase 21C, unless you're automation, of course, is you're going to have your web page front end, which is a very, very nice, clean, very fast responding website, I should say, front end, as well as the typical standard age-old and works fantastic Smart View. And they simply have taken enhanced Smart View to add some additional functionality for all those spreadsheet users. And finally, that'll reason to consider, if you haven't already, looking at 21C or even updating to the most current version of it is, if you are an EPM customer, 11.2 customer right now, Essbase 21C, as of 11/2/15, which just came out about a month and a half, 2 months ago now, very recently, it's the certified embedded battery included versions of Essbase. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So yeah, definitely a great time, Alex, to consider moving to 21C if you haven't already had that in your roadmap.
Okay, Joe. Oh, so we know that now is a good time to get ready. We know that Essbase 21C is the latest release. So Steve, what's in it for our clients from an application functionality view?
That's a good question, Alex. And yeah, let me focus on the application part, since I'm the application background person, history going way back into the Essbase and the application world. So there were a lot of updates. It's a significant upgrade. Anybody who's running 11.124, it's been around for over 10 years. There's been very few significant updates as we've gone along. So there, like I said, there's a lot in 21C, but I'd like to focus on four that I think are probably the key. And anybody who is either gotten there or thinking about it, I think they'll probably agree that these are, I would say, the big winners. So they are the hybrid mode, the modern UI that Joe covered and spoke about on the previous slide, shadow cubes, and sandbox. So let me start with hybrid. If you think about it this way, it combines the best of both worlds. It takes the power of the BSO cube with all the calculations that take place in it, and it combines that with the power of the ASO cube with all its dynamic aggregations and calculations into one single engine. It's hybrid mode's been around for quite a few years right now. But in its current state, it never really had the full breadth of Essbase covered in it. It's actually to the point right now where this hybrid mode pretty much covers all the functionality of Essbase in it. So it's a lot more robust, and I think a lot of people will get a lot out of using it. It's very easy to set up. At the end of the day, your database is going to be a lot smaller. So all your calculations, all your restructuring is going to take place. All those times are going to be drastically reduced, as well as anything like copying data, clearing data, exporting data. All of that will be a lot more efficient. So it's a big, I think a big plus. The second one would be the modern UI that Joe referred to earlier. You know, most people in the Essbase world are used to EAS. It's been around forever. EAS is, you know, it's an older technology, how to go about it. It did several things. The modern UI is a lot more robust. It's modernized. It's more of what you would think a UI should be looking like, and you can do a lot more than just maintain and update your dimensions. So I think in of itself, once people start using it and find out all of what can be done and where it is, they'll probably start forgetting about EAS pretty quickly. The third one is shadow cubes. And again, shadow cubes, the concept of it has been around in the sense that people have created their own workarounds, hack solutions to do it. The concept here is that at the end of a month, people have change management, they're updating metadata, and there was always going to be a downtime. And in some cases, a significant downtime, preventing people from doing their actual work. So the shadow cube lets you create a copy, do your edits, and then promote it back in place with a very short window and limited downtime. So it's really good, and it's now embedded in the product, so you don't have to have a custom solution on the side. And then lastly, Sandbox. Again, people do certain things like this. Like people might want to take a cube and they want to look at a certain piece. Could be a product, could be a period, could be a certain year, certain company, and they want to look at it and do some work to it. They don't want to take up processing time in the main cube while other people are doing it, so they create a slice. They do some work to it. If they like what they see, they may want to put it back into the application. So the sandbox lets you do that. It's all built in and it has the workflow to actually send it back to the application if you want to. It's not the same depth of workflow that you get in like some of the SaaS class applications, but it does let you control what you're doing. And if you want to send it back into the application. So these are a few, Alex, of the big winners, I think, in Essbase 21C from a functional perspective.
Wow, there are quite a lot of new beneficial features, and especially if that's just a few of them. Word on the street is there are also advances from a technology standpoint. Joe, would you mind telling us about any of those new improvements and updates?
Yeah, happy to. So, yep. So again, thanks again, Steve, for that great overview of the application functional enhancements. And there are, as there are for application enhancements, dozens and dozens of technological enhancements. Steve, you have my next slide if you don't mind. That'd be great. Thank you. So I want to touch upon 4 of the major areas today, which I feel as being sort of the tech guru on the forum today. That I love about this new release of Essbase 21C. As I mentioned before, Oracle finally modernized this release, at least in terms of its technology and platform. We've been begging for years to get a simpler security model from infrastructure, as well as a update to the platform. So we'll start with security first. This new version of 21C, it's a highly secure version. What does that really mean? Well, that means that for the first time, we can take advantage of things which have been industry standard for other software solutions for years, like encryption at rest. So if you're running with a Marketplace edition, which we'll discuss in a few moments what that actually means, it's on a cloud platform. And for the first time now, your data set can be fully supported with encryption at rest. Previously, it worked, but it wasn't quote unquote certified. This is the big one for you. For me, I used to fight battles constantly in the field when customers said to me, hey, I want to fully SSL enable or fully encrypt my data in transit. And what does that mean? That means putting your certificates for SSL at different points with your infrastructure. That was a nightmare in the past for Essbase. It was very, very kludgy at best. They've made fantastic improvements, allowing full support for TLS 1.2 and a lot easier implementation model. Finally, on security, we had this improved security model in the application itself. There's various ways you can do security depending upon how you're using Essbase 21C. But some of the high points are that we now leverage WebLogic security, very similar to how Oracle's done it for almost every other Fusion middleware application they've had for years now. If you're a cloud infrastructure customer using Oracle's cloud infrastructure, they fully support IDCS, which means you can do federated Azure AD implementations, and they support some industry standard things like SAML 2.0 and SSO. Integration at various points. So security has been a huge improvement under the hood for this new version of Essbase. Now, jumping ahead, platform, as I mentioned before, modernizing or bringing it to a current level. There's updated platform support depending upon which version. I'm sorry, not which deployment model, not version. Which deployment model of Essbase 21C you choose to use your organization. We fully support Linux 8, Windows 2022, JDK 1.8 natively now. No more patching and hooplas jump through. Latest browser support. You see Safari, Chrome, Edge, and whatnot. One of the greatest things about this new platform support, which we'll dive deeper into shortly, is we now have this ability to do what's called federated partition cubes for Essbase data. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. This is only available on the Marketplace edition of Essbase 21C, but we'll discuss what that means and how that impacts your usage of data. From an infrastructure perspective, regardless of which deployment model you go with, and there's a couple of choices here, it's very simplified and very scalable infrastructure. Essbase 21C is designed to be an all-in-one battery is included except for your relation repository version of Essbase, which means now there's no EAS and APS and parts and pieces to contend with. You simply take and say, here's my Essbase server, and I want to give it X amount of memory and CPU and disk, and you install it and go to town. If you want it to go faster, you just simply add more resources and guts to that, reboot the services, and voila. So again, we'll talk more about that. And finally, migration. They've made a very, very safe and secure migration process to actually get us from on-premise legacy systems up to the most current Essbase 21C. And then once you're on 21C, it's very simple to go between different environments, dev to prod. So yeah, some great stuff, Alex, in terms of technology improvements for Essbase 21C. And these are a few of my favorite points.
Great, Joe. There's so many advancements, and it sounds like the potential for a very smooth transition. Speaking of transitions, I think it's time for another poll. So I'm going to go ahead and let this pop up on everyone's screen, and if you could just answer it, and then we'll go over the results.
This should be a tough one. 3 choices. Okay.
All right, go ahead and answer if you'd like to, and you haven't already. I'm going to close the poll, and we will go over the results.
I guess you could say that was about what you would expect. So half of the people are looking, and half of the people are not looking to upgrade or looking at certain researching some of the options. I don't know, Joe, you got anything else that you take away?
No, not at all. Pretty simple, this one. And again, we appreciate
Yeah.
you folks giving the feedback. It kind of helps us to get a sense of where things are and what's happening in the industry. So thank you again.
Okay, we're going over a lot of great information, and the poll results seem to show that there's some interest in modernizing Essbase out there. Steve, if I was a client that was considering an upgrade to the latest version of Essbase, what types of things should I be thinking about? And what are options to get from where I am today to the most modern version of Essbase?
Yep, good question. So as we mentioned, a lot of people have already started discussing or planning to upgrade to 21C. So we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes, what all the various options are. But what we have done is put together kind of a list of considerations to help you get through that process. So if you look at the top 3, kind of like current state, what version are you on today? Are you Essbase only, or are you using Oracle Hyperion EPM applications like planning? And are you Windows or Linux? So a couple of good considerations for where you are today. Then you have the next several, which are more of your future state. So do you have a cloud strategy? Have you implemented it, or are you implementing your cloud strategy? What we find that is that not everybody wants to go to the cloud, or if they are going to go to the cloud, that they either don't want Oracle Cloud because they may have a significant investment in some other cloud technologies like Azure, and or is their solution best in a SaaS solution or a PaaS solution or infrastructure? So some considerations about your future state. And then the last 3 are kind of migration related, Alex. So, how many applications do you have during the migration? What are your source and targets, inbound, outbound integrations? Where are they today? Where will they be later? And with any application or migration, there's a lot of scripting that was done originally for automation, maintenance of things. So as you move, obviously things move with it. So there's some work to be done going in, changing pathing and some updates to it. So to get an idea as to the impact, how many scripts there are and how many updates need to be done would be probably some of the key considerations, Alex, to think about as you're doing these upgrades.
Yeah. All right. So now that we have the roadmap of considerations one should make, Steve mentioned that there are different paths that could be taken while upgrading. Joe, why don't you tell us about those options?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So there really are 3 different options if you want to kind of categorize, your deployment scenarios, if you will, for an Essbase 21C upgrade or a migration project. You've got, we'll kind of call it the EPM 11.2 flavor. You've got the marketplace and independent deployment. And we'll dig deeper into each one of these things momentarily. But at a high level, you are looking at the same code base under the hood. It's still Essbase 21C, the new engine that you're looking at, which means from a feature and functional and technical set of features, you're pretty much have continuity across these different 3 options. So let's dive into the first option, which is going to be the EPM 11.2, if you will, option. So what does this mean? Well, this is basically what you have today. If you're an existing Hyperion planning customer or a legacy Essbase customer, it's you have a version someplace, your choice, dealer's choice, if you will, on premise, VMware, OCI, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, other cloud provider, a version of your EPM stack deployed, your good old shared services, your EAS, your APS, your supporting products, as well as your Essbase server, and using SmartView to get to this. Well, in this as of version 11.2.5, which is going back a couple of years ago now, actually, believe it or not, Oracle supported Essbase 21C for use under the hood for the EPM product suite. And I will tell you, it did not work that great. Configuration was a bear. There always were weird things happening, and whenever you call tech support, you usually kind of brush off because honestly, none of them tried it. So we had a couple customers doing that over the last year or two, and it's been nothing but uphill battle. Well, the good news is, as of 11.2.15, which is a maintenance release application for the EPM stack, it now includes with the installation of that patch Essbase 21C. So if you're a net new customer who has the planning suite of applications, and if you choose to go with EPM stack 11.2.15, you're going to have latest and greatest version of Essbase under the hood all ready to go. Okay. Something to point out here is that prior to 11.2.15, which again, only 2 months old, you were still getting the legacy version of Essbase 11.1.2.4 under the hood. Okay. So this was sort of your first option, if you will, or deployment model, which is basically your EPM stack laid out there, and just either implement or go with the most current version of the 11.2.15 maintenance release, and that will now get you up to par with Essbase 21C code base. Before we jump into our second and third options here, I want to do one last quick poll just to kind of get a sense of things regarding cloud infrastructure for different customers. And if you don't mind popping the poll open, Alex, this one's pretty simple. Again, it's just talking about, what, if any, cloud platform or infrastructure does your organization use today? And that'll help us kind of guide part of our conversation. You got Oracle, Google Cloud, Amazon, Microsoft Azure, other, or not in use. We'll just give a few more seconds to this, and then we can jump back in.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the results with everyone.
Cool. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so which is great to see. And this actually, I'm smiling because I'm a big advocate of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. The bulk of our respondents are using Oracle's cloud infrastructure or cloud platform, which is great. And then we have Google and Amazon sort of mixed from there. And then nothing on this particular response today for Azure, but I know a lot of folks are out there using it. So this is good information to have. Thanks, Alex. So let's talk about your deployment option number 2, if you will, your second option, right? We have the EPM stack with the embedded version of Essbase. Then we get down to what's called the independent deployment version of Essbase 21C. And it's a funny name. I don't know why Oracle chose this, but basically think of this as standalone Essbase. Okay, so those of you who currently own Essbase today, you may see if you have a planning license, you're not getting licensed a separate item every year annually for your Essbase renewal. It just kind of baked in under the hood. Those of you who have core Essbase today are going to have something like Essbase Plus, more than likely on your annual license renewal sheet. Well, that's basically standalone Essbase. It's an Essbase license you can use without the quote-unquote EPM stack, okay? This is still a pick your own destination version of Essbase 21C now. Again, we always put OCI just because it's there, but Azure, Google Cloud, AWS, you name it, or on-prem VMware. This can be installed anywhere you want, any platform you want. It's a downloadable installation and configuration tool. You go to the masses, right? You're not bound to use Oracle by any means cloud infrastructure for this release. This version is offered in Windows or Linux, okay? So if you are a shop which does not want to go to a Linux platform, as an example, this is the version for you, okay? It allows deployment on both Windows platforms and Linux platforms, some of the major versions. Likewise, with any EPM or BI stack, there's always some relational or database backend component for configuration. This version of Essbase independent deployment supports SQL Server as a backend in addition to Oracle database options, okay? It's very, very similar. You maintain your current support model like you already have it today. You pay your annual license maintenance. You're paying for the user licenses. So your 25, 50, 100, 1,000, whatever you got licenses, you're paying that as usual. Nothing changes. You do get the benefit of the simplified infrastructure though with Essbase 21C. So what does that mean? It's a single server model, which I got to tell you from an IT perspective, it's scary at first, but once you begin using it, it's fantastic because now you're not worrying about this multiple layers of getting in the way to do things. When you want to increase resources, you simply increase resources and voila, things get magically faster. If you want to save some money, you downscale, certain times of the month and you can save money on your hardware and infrastructure. Okay. But the big thing is this does get you to Essbase 21C and get you current with the times for that new version. Okay. So that's your second option versus EPM baked under the hood. Second option is infinite deployment. And the third option, which is the newest option, if you will, is called OCI Marketplace deployment. Okay. So this is again, same version of Essbase 21C. Now, Oracle being Oracle, they're not stupid. They're going to add a little bells and whistles to this version that you can't get someplace else. Okay. So I say there's feature parity for the most part. There's a couple things that you can only get with this version of Essbase 21C. All right. And we'll get into that in a moment, what that actually means. But some important things to know about this version is this is I don't want to call it a PaaS service. It's a stack deployed version of resources. Okay. So you no longer have to contend with an installation of Essbase or a configuration of Essbase. It's all done through an actual Oracle deployed stack of software. Okay. So I'm not saying it's as simple as push 2 buttons, answer 3 questions is live because we know it's not, it's Oracle, but it's a lot simpler than having to build out your own infrastructure, right? It only resides on Oracle Cloud infrastructure. So you will be billed for this as if you were being billed for any other OCI based resources. You kind of get this token at the arcade concept. You get a bucket of tokens, for the year and use them how you want to use them. Oracle doesn't care how you use them, and you can use some tokens for this particular marketplace deployment. All right. It will be living on an OCI infrastructure, which means you'll have the ability to get to the operating system level if you want to maintain this. It's your platform, your instance. It's not like the SaaS stuff like EPM Planning Cloud or PBCS or FCCS where you can't see under the hood. You have full access to get to these servers. There is a database required component for that, and it supports Oracle Database Cloud Service, Oracle Database by itself up in OCI, or the Autonomous Data Warehouse as the backend for that. It's only available today on Linux, which means if you have a lot of automation and scripting, you got to find a way to get that to work with this new version deployed to Marketplace. And I can tell you that may seem like a scary prospect, but actually it's very, very simple. It's very simple to convert these scripts from Windows batch files over to Linux shell scripts, or what a lot of customers do if they're super complicated scripting processes, they'll stand up what we kind of call almost like an automation box, a small Windows server in OCI, and just run the clients on that, which is super, super simple and very, very cost effective. So 2 of the coolest features, I think, for the marketplace version of Essbase 21C, which you don't get with the other versions, are you get the streamlined update process with the software. And what that means is it's a deployable stack model. So you go out there and say Essbase 21.5, I'm making this up, came out, and you want to get that deployed. Well, you go, in essence, push a button, deploys that new ecosystem, and the software behind the hood will migrate your applications for you to this new environment. You then validate a new environment. When you're happy, you turn off your old environment. Again, not as simple as that was easy button, but it's a lot simpler than it is today to do all the individual parts and pieces by itself. Okay. And the last feature, which I think is the coolest thing, is the federated partition cubes for Essbase data. And what this means is for the first time, you can now store and report and analyze and use your Essbase data stored in a relational database. So there's no more of these Essbase page files sitting out the proprietary. You actually can use Autonomous Data Warehouse within OCI and actually have your Essbase data live out there. So these are a lot of information, but these are the 3 deployment options, if you will, for the new Essbase 21C.
Great. Thanks, Joe. This has been a great overview of the options and considerations for modernizing Essbase ecosystems. And I know we're getting close to our 45-minute mark. If anyone needs to leave, we totally respect your time, but we do have just a few more slides if you want to hang in there with us. And also, we don't just talk the talk about upgrading. Steve, would you mind sharing a bit about some of the clients we've recently helped with their modernization journey?
Sure thing, absolutely, Alex. So what we've done here is there were three options to upgrade. So we picked one case study for each one. The first one will be EPM 11.2 option. They originally were on an older version, and like many people, they had failed some security audits, and that was the major reason for going up to 11.2 out of 11.124. They were not ready for cloud. As an overall direction. So we upgraded them. We got them to 21C. They're on their own internal data center. I think the big thing here was that they now are 100% compliant with all security bits and pieces. And also in the process, they've shaved off 38% of their reporting time during their monthly. So their main reason was security, which is the reason to go the 11.2 option for this one. The second one would be the independent deployment option. This was a automotive financial services organization, a lot of fast growth that they were going through. They wanted to upgrade, and they wanted to get to the next one. They wanted to do it in a 3-4 month time frame. They also had no data disaster recovery process. So this solution, we were able to get them onto OCI using independent deployment. We were able to design a modern DI strategy for them. And at the end of the day, we completed it in 3 weeks earlier. We gave them a fully functioning independent deployment as well as a DR solution that met or exceeded all of their SLAs. So that was a very successful project for them as well. And then the last one would be the marketplace deployment. This was a full service restaurant. They were currently on 11.124. They were on AWS hosted. It was kind of expensive for them and they had no DR. So we were able to take them from that version, put them on OCI. We, in the process, because of the pricing of OCI and how things were, they were now on OCI with a less costly solution. We also were able to, because they didn't have any in-house tech support, we were able to sign them also on as a day 2 services. So we now handle a lot of their technical aspects. So those are probably 3 examples of the three options, Alex, for upgrading.
Thanks, Steve. We've covered the what's new, what people's options are, the actual scenarios of objectives and challenges from current clients. We know that there are successful real life results that come from upgrading your Essbase, but let's tell the people what they really want to know. The burning question: what does an Essbase 21C marketplace migration really cost in terms of manpower, timing, and capital?
Yeah, I can happily answer that question for you, Alex. So this truly is, like I said, done a brass tacks here, right? Either you have it, you're looking at it, you're considering it, you're not even, not even crossing your mind. What does it take, or what parts and pieces are, from a cost perspective, part of an actual Essbase 21C migration? And we're going to use the marketplace model because they're very similar regardless of which one you're going with, but this one seems to be the most pressing or most asked for lately. I want to point out that for any implementation of project, there's always several areas that need to be considered for both time and cost elements. Okay, so kind of putting this chart together here, you forget the term OCI. It could be Azure, it could be something else. Doesn't make a difference. But you have your infrastructure cost, right? That's your hardware, where things are living. You're going to have some kind of a services fee, consulting services, whether you're going through your own channel partner, Oracle services for consulting, a firm like ourselves in the private market. You'll have some kind of software license dependency cost, and ultimately the biggest cost in my mind comes down to time. Alex, is sort of what I think about, because the time element's a key thing that folks don't realize. Time is money. Time does impact customers' projects. So starting with the infrastructure in the Essbase Marketplace realm. Okay, it is, as I mentioned before, deployed on OCI. The model is as simple as a 1 server instance, or 1 instance, if you will, for your Essbase server, and then 1 database backend. That's all you need to have. very, very, very simplified infrastructure. Okay. As I mentioned multiple times today, that those can be scaled up and down as need be, almost on the fly, real time, to add improvements to your actual performance of your system. Along with the infrastructure aspects, you have your services time. Now, this 160 hours, it's not pulled out of the hat. This is based upon our experiences from a lot of customers over the last several years doing this. This would be the time you'd pay a firm like ourselves, as an example, to come in to just do the hands-on keyboard aspects, right? So keep in mind if there's PM work, or if there's other project stuff or testing or UAT. But what we're going to get down to here is what's the bare minimum out of pocket cost for folks like yourselves looking at upgrading. And normally it's a 3 to 4 week of actual infrastructure consultant time frame to do a marketplace migration. Okay. Now, if you come to us with one Essbase application, fantastic. You come to us with 400 Essbase applications, number is going to increase a tad bit. But we always try to work with the customer directly to find out, what do you want to own? What do you want us to own? That's kind of how our model works. All right. Third piece is you have a software license aspect. Now, Essbase Marketplace, as I mentioned, it changes a bit. Historically, you've had your annual on-premise license renewal maintenance cost, your, whatever, 100 Essbase users, for example, and you're paying your, whatever, I'm making this up, $800 a year to Oracle per user, right? Well, that's your annual cost. The way it works now, it's with Marketplace edition of Essbase, which is the OCI hosted version of it. You're paying by what's called Oracle CPU or OCPUs. So we don't care if you have one Essbase user or 1,000 Essbase users. You don't pay by the user anymore. You're paying basically by almost the Oracle core, if you will, for the instance. Okay, so software license model changes a bit. There is a database requirement, as I keep saying, for the Essbase implementation. So you will have to be paying either your own database licenses for that, or you're going to have to go with, again, one of their pay-as-you-go type models, where it's kind of pre-partitioned cost. Okay. The last piece of the costing model for any project to really think about and determine it's the time frame. Now, most of our Essbase projects, believe it or not, take place less than 4 months to go from an on-premise version of Essbase to an Essbase 21C Marketplace edition. And that's a reality. That's not just a made-up number here. This is big and small implementations. Now, impactors and factors are things like client needs to be on board, right? If we're sitting waiting for you for 2 months or something, well, now you're 6 months, right? But the reality is most of these things are very streamlined. So once we start clicking on keyboards, most customers are live, well within a half-year time frame for a straight native Essbase 21C implementation. Again, your mileage may vary. The more complicated, the larger it is, yada, 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 but they're pretty straightforward. The great thing about this is when you're deploying Essbase Marketplace, you're deploying to a different platform altogether, which means you can do all your work in parallel when your current system is still running live without downtime and impact, ultimately to a very small, I put a couple hours on here, window right before cutover to go live. So you don't have the risk of having to upgrade in place on your current on-premise ecosystem or your currently hosted elsewhere installed ecosystem. So this is sort of the 4 pillars, if you will, of any kind of an Essbase Marketplace project as far as costs are concerned. And I want to take one last moment, if I can, just to talk through what your OCI costs would be. Those of you who are familiar with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, fantastic. Get a sip of coffee, have a drink. Those of you who are not, I want to talk about this a bit. This would be the infrastructure costs that are involved for an Essbase 21C Marketplace customer. Now, this scenario, right, it's a one Essbase server, one database backend, one load balancer. Very, very simple. This scenario, this model right here could easily support, as it's currently spec'd out and priced out, 100+ concurrent Essbase users. And that's no joke. So you can see how from a cost-effective model, Essbase 21C Marketplace can be for you. You really have the luxury of scaling up and down as need be to support your ecosystem without having to get cost prohibitive. This would be what's called a 4 Oracle CPU server, 64 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte of storage being utilized monthly, right? And the cost of that particular server is only going to cost you about $145. It's almost nothing at all in terms of the overall scheme of things. Same thing, skipping a line down to Oracle database service. That's the backend required for Essbase Marketplace, Essbase server deployment, and that's about $200 a month. Okay, so they got $345 as if you're net new without bringing your own licenses to the table. The big hit on here, of course, is the Essbase Marketplace license cost, and it is again based upon that first line number one, okay? So the more OCPUs you allocate to your Essbase app server, the more your marketplace costs increase. Now, this is based upon full-time utilization, which is averaging 730 to 744 hours a month, year round. What a lot of customers do once you get savvy at it is they will go out there and they'll turn on and turn off their Essbase ecosystems as need be, or scale up and scale down as need be. So they can either get more bursting performance out of their system, or if it's quiet times, you can downscope things a bit. So you can see, end of the day, for less than 52 grand a year, if you are a net new customer with 100 users Essbase, you could be out there literally in about 4 months time frame, and that would be your annual cost. Retail, no discounts here. That's the retail pricing on it. So that kind of talks a little bit about Alex and Steve about some of the actual real costs associated with Essbase Marketplace deployments.
Awesome, thanks. So that concludes today's webinar. This has been quite a journey down the road of modernizing Essbase. Thank you all for joining us on this exploration. If you would like more information about how iArc solutions can help you adopt or enhance your cloud-based solutions and help you pave the way for increased agility, enhanced decision-making, and sustained competitiveness, contact Steve or Joe today. Their information is here on this final slide, and we also have a contact option on our website. This webinar was recorded along with all the Q&A transcripts. If you had any questions that you asked, we'll send all of you attendees an email, and also everything will be posted as a blog on our website and all of our social media accounts. So follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook for this information and future webinar opportunities.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you very much.